We are less than a week away from the Cotton Bowl with Oklahoma taking on Florida. Kyle Pitts, much publicized opt-out on the Gators side. Trey Brown on the Oklahoma side. In regards to Kyle Pitts' absence, I think it's a pretty obvious best tight end in the nation. Yeah. If you watch Florida games, yes, they've got other capable receivers, but he is the guy that opens things up for the other receivers. And even though he's a tight end, yes, he lines up in line much of the time, but he's almost like a Jimmy Graham type wide receiver. And certainly the cascade domino effect is that more attention goes to the other guys, and that certainly hurts their situation. In regards to Trey Brown, your thoughts about his absence and how that affects the Sooners?
Yeah, so I think that it'll impact Oklahoma in the secondary, just from a he's been back there. He's a three-year starter for Oklahoma. He's played a lot of football. Really, he's not been extremely consistent, but he's been solid this year. I think in Grinch's second year in the scheme, I think it's helped him a lot from a consistency perspective. I think not having him back there, they've got some depth at that secondary position that they haven't had in the past, but at the same time, they're going against the best passing offense in the country in Florida right now, from a statistical perspective. So, I think the depth is going to be challenged, certainly there. I think, to your point on Kyle Pitts, it's a bigger blow probably for Florida's passing game than losing Trey Brown is. But, I think the thing that Oklahoma people will look at back with Trey Brown, and Alex Grinch kind of said it in his press conference yesterday, that Trey Brown leaving when he is and opting out of the bowl game, no one's at least publicly upset with him doing that. And it's kind of the equivalent of a walk-off home run, right? He's had 3 consecutive years in the Big 12 championship game where he's made game-winning plays. A few years ago he sacked Sam Ehlinger for the safety. He was able to track down the name is escaping me now, the Baylor wide receiver last year, and held Baylor to a field goal where they could have scored a touchdown and kind of won that game in regulation. And then certainly the interception late against Brock Purdy in the this year's Big 12 championship game. So the depth that Oklahoma has been able to get over the last year or so is going to help in that capacity, but it is going to be a blow for that Sooner secondary.
Jason, one of the interesting aspects of bowl season would be conference pride, conference affiliation, our opportunity to extend what we saw in the non-conference play, which we didn't get this season in 2020, but look at some of those performances and results and then match it up against bowl season. And I think it's very valid. I know that there are opt-outs. I know that there are those thoughts that, okay, this team's highly motivated, this one's not, and all that. But when it all shakes out, I still think it means something when you take the top 5, 6, 7 seeds in every conference and play other Power 5 schools. For the most part, 90% of the games fall into that category. And here we've got one where, sure, the SEC, I can confidently say, has the best postseason record of any conference over the last, whatever you want to take, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, something in that range. I'm not going to say that it's that dominant, though, over the Big 12 recently by any stretch.
Right.
And I'm talking about their complete record against the other 4, not just the Big 12. Against the Big 12, they have certainly had a tussle. This causes me, Jason, to possibly go back now and add them all up, go back through the last 5 years or so. But I'm thinking of Oklahoma wins over Auburn and Alabama in Sugar Bowls. We can go on down the line. Texas A&M squeaked one out against, against Oklahoma State in the Texas Bowl last year. And there's usually 2 to 3 matchups against the 2 conferences. But we had some war of words here. The battle has been launched here on the Florida side.
Yeah, Mark, it's so interesting. And to your point, when you go into these games, exactly what is the mindset coming in? I think we talked a little bit about off camera, but I think Florida is, maybe comes in here with a little bit of a greater disappointment in being in this game than Oklahoma does, with 6 points away from possibly getting back to to a playoff spot. You know, with the how they ended that game against Alabama, and then certainly Oklahoma. You know, there's some crazy things that could have happened to get them back to the playoffs, but for all intents and purposes, we're out of the playoff discussion. You know, early on in the year, so you know, you kind of come in here thinking that Oklahoma's probably a little bit more excited to be in this game, you know, maybe than Florida is. But to your point, you know, when the media availability were some of the players and coaches on both sides for the Cotton Bowl yesterday, we got you know, a little bit of bulletin board material for Oklahoma, or you know, maybe you look at it from the Florida side is that they're in it, they're excited about playing this game. So the Florida linebacker James Houston said that Oklahoma is a good matchup, but they're not on our level. They're not the SEC. They're not the Florida Gators. So I think that you know, game on, right, from both sides. You know, after kind of looking at that, you know, you think both teams are probably you know, ready to go. And you know, this year it's kind of interesting, kind of looking at this game, Mark. You know, Florida looks a bit like Oklahoma in 2017, 2018. I mean, they're certainly not as bad defensively as Oklahoma was in those 2 years, but they've got a Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback in Kyle Trask. They've got the best passing game in the country statistically, 388 yards a game. But from a defensive perspective, from SEC, you know, by SEC standards, their defense is not very good. You know, it'll be interesting to see how Oklahoma does against, you know, what's perceived as maybe not a strong defensive team. I think if you polled Oklahoma fans kind of going into this game, this is a matchup that I think Oklahoma wanted. I think from a team and I think there's a little bit of interest in having, you know, A&M in the Cotton Bowl, just, you know, kind of being on the outside of the playoff looking in. But I think just from a barometer perspective, I think this is big for Oklahoma. You know, the defense has steadily improved, and this year it's the best that it's been in quite some time. Probably 20 plus years is better than the defense. But what a better way from a measuring stick nationally to see where you're at than to go against this team, you know, specifically if they have most of their weapons there. You know, I think a lot of people will think Oklahoma has next year is the year where they can really contend for a championship. You know, they're going to be seasoned more on the offensive side, and you know, if a lot of those defensive players, you know, come back next year, which it appears as though they probably will, you know, they have a chance to have a really good season and get back in there. But the fact of the matter is, the last two games they've played against strong, really good SEC offenses, Alabama, of course, in 2018, and then certainly LSU last year, Oklahoma got punched in the mouth, and they didn't recover really well, specifically last year. So how can that improved defense, you know, be able to slow down, be able to play with Florida? I think that's a big takeaway coming into, you know, 2021, that, you know, if they're able to hold them to, you know, anywhere from 28 to 31 points in the game, and I think you look at that as a success. But if you see Florida, you know, in the 40s, mid 40s, or even happen to get into the 50s against Oklahoma, I think you almost have to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what do we need to do to be able to compete nationally, to put ourselves in a position, you know, to win a national championship.